Well, hello all my yarny friends. I'm Sara Sach and welcome back to my crochet channel. Now today's video is video or crochet pattern number 2 in our year-long crochet along. And what our crochet along is for 2022 is called Scrap Happy Crochet Along. And what our goal this year is to try to use up a lot of our leftover yarns and make fun and useful projects. Today we're concentrating on our medium weight cotton yarns, and what we're making here is called the Scrap Happy Flip Through Towel. And what it is it's a nice big towel. It measures about 16 inches long and about 12 inches wide. And we just added in all our colors, and you can see I controlled the colors on this one, and I changed my colors every 2 rows at the ends of my rows, and then just kept adding in random colors of all 100% cotton yarns. Those yarns can be peaches and cream. I love this cotton, premier cotton, whatever cottons that you have, just make sure that it's 100% cotton and that the fiber is, of course, cotton. And you'll notice there's a slit up here. And the way this works is you stick this up and you take your towel and you flip it through so it can hang on your handles or on your refrigerator or any place you want to hang up a towel. And I'm sure you saw that in the picture at the beginning of this video. Now I wanted to show you this one because what I did with this one is I just randomly added in the colors. And I tried to stick with this one with a lot of my leftover reds, blues, whites, and variegateds. And so you can see I changed colors here, not at the end of a row. And I did the same thing here and here and here. And so I call this just random stripes because I didn't stick with any particular pattern like I did with this one, where I changed colors every 2 rows and just brought back in whatever colors that I had on hand. And this is fine. It works beautiful. And this is fine. And I wanted to show you both ways so you could decide if you want to do random or control your stripes. And after I tell you what we need exactly for the project, I'm going to talk a little bit about how to add those colors in when using cotton yarn. Now you can find the free crochet pattern on my blog, and as always, I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. To make our flip through scrap happy towel, and again, that can be used in the kitchen, in the bath, or wherever you want to use it. You're going to need approximately 4 ounces of cotton yarn. And what I did with this one was all my leftover cotton yarns. You can see I've got lots of different colors in there. I just started winding it on a ball, and as I ran out of that color, I added a new color in. That way it's all in one ball, and I can work off just this one ball if I want to. Or you can roll it into individual balls. I do that also if there is more left than just a little bit. But you need about 4 ounces of any colors, 100% cotton yarn. And it's really important to stick with 100% cotton yarn because once you wash and dry these, they're towels. They're going to get wet. And if you use, say, an acrylic or another fiber, it's not going to wash up the same. And one neat thing about cotton yarns is once it goes through the laundry, it becomes more absorbent. And so they work great as towels. Another thing you can use this for, and what I use mine for, is I have a dishwasher, of course, and I put a lot of things in my dishwasher. But there's a few items I don't like to put in my dishwasher, like my steak knives and things, because I don't want them to get kind of yucky. I don't know what it is about the dishwasher, but I don't want to put my knives in there and some of my cooking pots. And so I'll just lay this out on the counter. I'll wash them, set them on that, and then once the dishwasher's all full, I'll come back and I'll dry those off with this towel. Then I can hang it up to dry. All right? So you need about 4 ounces of any 100% cotton yarn. And we're going to be stitching today with our eye hook, which is a 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. You need a needle for weaving in those ends, and of course you need a pair of scissors. In my opinion, I don't usually use the Russian join on cotton yarns. I think it makes it a little too bulky and knotty looking. And so I would really prefer this method that I use, whether I'm at the end of an aisle, an end of a row, or in the middle of the row. I usually add my cotton yarn in the same way. And so what I'll do is, I'll pull that out. What I do is we're stitching half double crochets, and so I'm going to go ahead and start my half double crochet, but then I won't finish it. I'll bring in my new color like that, and then I'll go on and do my next stitch, and I will stitch over those ends of my yarn. All right, but that doesn't mean we're finished with those ends of the yarn. All right, so I'm going to grab those ends. There we go. I'll go ahead and stitch my next 2 stitches. Okay, and then when I finish my project, I'll come back in with my needle and I'll just weave those in. And it's really important when you're stitching with cotton that you weave in really well. You want to make sure when you're stitching that you go through stitches and fibers of your cotton yarn. All right, I'm going to fan the end of that out, put it on my needle. There we go. All right, and so what you'll do, we've stitched over it a little bit. We'll go across that, and you'll notice I'm going to go right in the fiber of that yarn, and you need to go one way, come back the other way, and then come back the other way again. And I call that 3 times because you come up, you go one way, you go back the other way, then you go back the other way, going through stitches and fibers. And if you decide to control your color stripes like I did on this one, you do the same thing. You go to the end, you bring in your new color, you turn, you stitch your first stitches over a couple of those stitches over a couple of the strands of yarn, and then you keep going, and then when you're done you come back in and weave that in. It's really important when you're using cotton yarn that you weave in your ends, because it's going to go through the laundry a lot, because it's going to be used a lot, and so you don't want those ends to come undone. All right, let's get started. We're going to begin with our slip knot, and we're going to chain 34 chains. Now we're making a towel and we don't want the bottom of it to be puckered up. So let's make sure we stitch this initial 34 chains just a little bit loose. So we're stitching loosely 34 chains. I've stitched 34 chains a little bit loose. And now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch a half double crochet in the second chain from the hook. So yarn over, there's the first, we'll go in the second, pull up a loop, you'll have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and go through all 3 loops. And we'll stitch 1 half double crochet in each of our chains across. One half double crochet in each of our chains across. I stitched 1 half double crochet in each of my chains across. We started in the second chain from the hook, so we have 33 half double crochets. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and we're going to turn our work. And the chain 2 here counts as our first half double crochet. So we're going to stitch a half double crochet in the next 2 stitches. We're going to skip the next and stitch our half double crochet V-stitch in the next stitch. And a half double crochet V-stitch is half double crochet, chain 1, and half double crochet. All right, so we'll skip the next stitch and go in the next, stitch our half double crochet, chain 1, and half double crochet in the same stitch. We'll skip the next and repeat. Half double crochet, chain 1, half double crochet. And again, this is our half double crochet V-stitch. And so now we're going to repeat this across our row. Skip the next, half double crochet V-stitch in the next. Skip the next, half double crochet V-stitch in the next. And we'll repeat this across our row. I repeated across, half double crochet V-stitch in the next, skip the next, all the way across, and you're going to have 13 half double crochet V-stitches. Then you'll have 4 stitches at the end. You'll skip the next one and then half double crochet in these last 3 stitches. And we'll go ahead and chain 2. All right, so our chain 2 at the beginning counted as 1 half double crochet, and then we have double crocheted in the next 2. Then we skipped the next, V-stitched in the next, and repeated that across for 13 total half double crochet V-stitches. Then we skipped the next stitch and 1 half double crochet in the last 3 stitches and chain 2. And that's how row 2 should look. Before we do row 3, I want to show you what you can do if you want to control your color stripes. I'm going to take out that chain 2, and let's say my blue ended right there, or I want to end my blue and maybe bring it in a little bit later. You can see I have just a little bit of that blue left. Okay, but I want to control my stripes, all right? So I cut the blue off. I'm going to bring in my new color, snug that down, and chain 2. It's very important, if you want to keep your color stripes controlled, that you do the chain 2 after your color change. All right, so let's turn our work. And so now that chain 2 counts as our first half double crochet, and we're going to stitch a half double crochet in the next 2 stitches. But I'm going to stitch over those tails of yarn. All right, so I'll go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, and go through all 3. And then I'll do that in the next stitch. That gives us a nice clear change of color, and we've stitched over those tails of yarn. Now, I'm going to move them out of the way, but when I'm finished or when I have a minute, I'm going to come back in with my needle and weave those ends in. It's very important when you're working with cotton yarn to weave those ends in or they'll come undone. All right, so now we're going to go to the first chain 1 space of the first V-stitch, and we're going to stitch our half double crochet V-stitch, which is a half double crochet, chain 1, and half double crochet. And we'll do this in each of the chain 1 spaces of the V-stitch half double crochets all the way across. And that's a mouthful, isn't it? I love this stitch. I think it's perfect for towels because it gives you a little bit of texture and it's super pretty. All right, so we're just going to stitch a half double crochet V-stitch in each of the chain one spaces across. So I stitched a half double crochet V-stitch in each of the chain one spaces from those V-stitches of the previous row. That leaves us these 4 stitches on the end. So we're going to skip this one and stitch 1 half double crochet in each of those last 3 stitches. There we go, and chain 2. Now we'll turn our work. Isn't that pretty? It's just a lovely stitch and it makes a really nice texture. All right, let's do row 4. Our chain 2 counts as our first half double crochet, so we're going to have double crochet in the next 2 stitches. And again, we're going to stitch a half double crochet V-stitch in each of the chain 1 spaces from the V-stitches of the previous row. And again, we're going to repeat this across just like we did on row 3. And so I continued working across, stitching half double crochet V-stitch in each of the chain 1 spaces from the V-stitches of the previous row. Here's my last 4 stitches, so I'll skip this one and stitch 1 half double crochet in those last 3 stitches. There we go. And again, chain 2. And I think you're figuring out the pattern now. All right, so let's do row 5. Now you'll notice I'm running out of yarn. So I'm going to turn my work. I'll go ahead and stitch a half double crochet in the next 2 stitches because on this row and every row, the chain 2 counts as our first half double crochet. But now I'm running out of yarn, so I'm going to bring in another color. So before I finish that second half double crochet, I'll bring in my yarn as that last loop. All right, make sure you leave enough to weave that in. Then we'll come right over to our first chain 1 space and stitch our V-stitch. And I am stitching over, forgot my chain 1, there we go. I am stitching over that tail of yarn. All right, now I'm just going to let it drop and go to the next one and stitch my half double crochet V-stitch. But you'll notice that this tail of yarn is on this side and this tail of yarn is on this side. So what you'll do is you'll just take your hook and you'll go in there and pull it to the other side. You want to make sure that all of your tails of yarn are on the same side when you weave those in. All right, and remember, you can stitch over them, but they must be weaved in with a needle later, and especially with cotton yarn. So I'm just going to continue moving across, stitching my half double crochet V-stitches in the chain 1 spaces from the V-stitches of the previous row. And my tails of yarn will all be on this side, which is the back of my work. And you'll notice when you work that it looks pretty much the same on the front as it does on the back because of the way we're turning. All right, so keep that in mind when you decide which side you want to put your tails of yarn on. I completed row 5, stitching my half double crochet V-stitches in the chain 1 spaces of the V-stitches from the previous row. we skip the last stitch and 1/2 double crochet in the last 3, and then I chained 3. But before we go on, I want to show you how to weave this in. Now we stitched over it, and now it's on the back of our work, and I want to show you this again. When you're stitching with different colors, you want to make sure you stay in that color, or you might have accidentally go through, and maybe on the orange you might have a bump of beige, or the same with the blue, depending on what colors. And so you want to go back and forth, going through fibers and stitches, not the holes. My needle came unthreaded there. And it's really important that you do it this way because, again, it's going to go through the laundry. So you'll go one way, going through fibers and stitches, and then come back the other way. And you'll feel it if it's nice and snug. Okay? I go 3, maybe 4 if I'm not happy with the way it's looking, and then I clip it. All right? And I'll go ahead and tidy those up later, but I wanted you to see how to do that on the actual demo that we're doing. All right? And so what you're going to do is to continue to repeat row 5 for 26 more rows. All right? We've stitched 5, and you need to stitch 26 more rows. You change colors as you would like, whether you want it to be controlled rows like over here, or if you want to just have random color changes. Both of them I love, and it's up to you what you prefer. So, repeat row 5 for 26 more rows. I have completed my 26 additional rows, which gives us 31 rows. Now, this is the towel portion. We're going to make the slit and then the top portion. If you want your towel longer, add as many rows as you would like. All right, now this is the demo that I did that I already had prepared, so of course the colors are different. I did this one in random stripes. You can see where I changed colors randomly. I use solids and variegateds, and I really love it. All right, so now we're going to do the slit so we can flip our towel through. Our chain 2 counts is our first half double crochet. So we're going to have double crochet in the next 2. Now we'll stitch our V-stitch, half double crochet V-stitch in the first chain 1 space. And then we'll repeat that just 3 more times. There we go. There's 1, 2, and 3. So we have 4 of our half double crochet V stitches. We did 1 and then repeated it 3 times. Now we're going to chain 10. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now we're going to skip the next 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 V stitches and stitch a V stitch in this chain 1 space. And again, we're stitching half double crochet V stitches. Then we'll stitch 1 in the next 3. There we go. Move this over. And one more here. There we go. Then we'll skip that stitch and stitch 1 half double crochet in each of the half double crochets that are left here, which are 3 of them, and chain 2. All right, so let's take a look at what we did. We have 3 half double crochets. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 half double crochet V-stitches, chain 10, skip 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we stitched 4 half double crochet V-stitches and then 1 half double crochet in each of the last 3 and chain 2. Now we're going to turn our work. Our chain 2 counts as our first half double crochet. We'll have double crochet in the next 2. We'll stitch our half double crochet V-stitch in the chain 1 space of these first 4 V-stitches. And that brings us to our chain 10. We're going to skip the first chain and stitch a V-stitch in the next. We'll skip the next chain and stitch a V-stitch in the next. We'll skip the next and stitch a V-stitch in the next. Skip the next and stitch a V-stitch in the next. Skip the next, then stitch a V-stitch in that last stitch. There we go. So now we've stitched 5 half double crochet V-stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on that chain 10. Now we'll go right to this first half double crochet V-stitch and stitch our half double crochet V-stitch right in that chain 1 space and repeat that in the next 3. We'll skip the next stitch and stitch 1 half double crochet in those last 3 half double crochet stitches. And chain 2. Now, just to be clear on this, you're going to have your 3 half double crochets here. You're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 half double crochet V-stitches again, like we did down here, and then 3 half double crochets on the end and chain 2. And we've made our little slot so we can flip our towel through. So we've chained 2, we're going to turn our work, and we're going to repeat row 5, which is what we've been doing. 1 half double crochet in the next 2 because our chain 2 counts as our first, and then we're back to stitching our V-stitches in the chain 1 spaces of our V-stitches. Exactly the way we did on row 5 and in every row, working up our towel. Half double crochet V-stitch in each of our half double crochet V-stitches across, and then we'll end with those 3 half double crochets. I completed that across and then ended with my 1/2 double crochet in each of those last 3 stitches and chain 2. And so what you're going to do is you're going to continue to repeat row 5 for 3 more rows. We'll just repeat what we just did for 3 more rows to form the top of our towel. I added those 3 additional rows to the top of my towel. And now my towel's finished except for the trim. After your last row up here, you need to chain 1, not chain 3. And so what we're going to do is we're going to turn our work. We're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of our stitches across, and then we're going to evenly work down and back up all 4 sides of our towel. So we're going to stitch 1 single crochet in each of those stitches across. We won't place one in the chain 1 space, just 1 single crochet in each of the 1/2 double crochets across. If you add one in that chain 1 space, you're going to end up with too many stitches. All right, so 1 single crochet in each of the 1/2 double crochets across the top of our towel. I stitched that row of single crochets, only stitching in the 1/2 double crochets. This brings us to our first corner. I've stitched 1 and I'm going to stitch 2 more single crochets in that corner. All right, so now we're going to evenly stitch down the side of our towel. And the best way to get a nice even row is to stitch in the sides of those stitches if you possibly can. Sometimes they're a little snug like that one. But it's better to stitch in the stitch and not in these holes. You get a much better looking edge on your towel or whatever you're working on. Going through the sides of those stitches and evenly stitching single crochets. Now, there is not a set number of stitches that you need. You need to just eyeball it, look at it, and see how it's flowing, okay? If you're putting them too close together, spread them out. If they're too far apart, then put them closer together. You want it just to lay evenly and look pretty. So we're evenly stitching single crochets all the way down the side of our towel. So I evenly single crochet down the side of my towel. Now I'm to the corner, and again I stitched 3 single crochets in the corner, and I'm just going to work across the bottom of my towel, and this is where we did that beginning chain, so we have nice stitches to stitch in down here. And then we'll stitch across here, we'll put 3 single crochets in the next corner, and then work back up the other side of our towel, and then join back in. I stitched across the top, row of single crochets, down the side, across the bottom, and back up the other side of my towel for a nice even row of single crochets. All right, so now I've stitched 3 single crochets in all 4 corners, and so now I'm going to join to that first single crochet with a slip stitch, and I'm going to cut my yarn. There we go. All righty. Now I'll go in that next loop or next stitch and pull that loop to the back so we have a nice pretty finish on the front of our towel, and then I'll just take my needle and weave this in, and our towel will be finished and ready for drying the dishes or just looking pretty. So my towel's all tidied up and ready to be used. All right, so here is the one I did with the random stripes, and here is the other one that I showed you that I did with color stripes. This one's been through the wash, so it's a little bit smaller. And I love how much softer they become once they do go through the wash. I've been using it and I love it. And that's why I wanted to share with you how to make one. And I thought it was a perfect project for our Scrap Happy Crochet Along. Just a hint about next month's Scrap Happy pattern is we're going to be doing a Scrap Happy project with our leftover blanket yarns. So if you've got some blanket yarn, some burlap blanket or other brand of blanket yarns that you just don't know what to do with, I've got a project for you for next month's Scrap Happy Crochet Along project.